What's going on, everybody? LK here, back at it again with another video, and today some kind of general fighting game advice for y'all. So I actually get the question, what is the best controller / what controller should I use to play fighting games? So I made a video on this before, but this is right when I was starting YouTube, so I figured I'd make an updated one for this here for y'all. If you got a quick second, consider liking this video or subscribing to the channel if you already have not. It does help the channel grow, and I do appreciate it. Thank you so much. It's like Dragon Ball, the new Guilty Gear is coming out, Street Fighter 5, whatever. And the real answer, if that's all you're looking for from this video, is there isn't one. In the past, some faster paced games kind of required controllers that were not pads, like your standard gamepad, to play. Some characters just had mechanics that were designed with arcades in mind and not for the home consumer. But Dragon Ball and every other new ArcSys game, and probably just all fighting games at this point, now consider the home consumer way more. You can also see this in competition as well. At this point, people just play whatever they want and whatever is the most comfortable for them. So the first thing I have to say is you should really use what you are more comfortable with. If you want to switch controllers, it has to be for a pretty specific reason. I gotta show up this 4Loco controller though? Damn, bro. So let's start though by talking about the most common type of controller, the pad, PlayStation pads. So here I have a PlayStation 4 controller. This is the most common type of controller that people use. If you've been playing video games for a while, you've been using this for a while. So pads have two main advantages over the other controllers. One is that you can't really hear them. Like, I'm mashing buttons right now. You can't really hear, it's pretty quiet. The other, of course, being that they are pretty cheap compared to the other options. Now, of course, today in modern games, pads cost a lot more than they used to, but still, compared to the other peripherals, they're more than $100. Pads are around like 60 to 80 bucks, depending on what you're looking at. So it's still the most inexpensive option, and you probably have the same one that you've been using for a long time anyway. They're also small, of course, and they fit in your hand, so that it's really easy to like put in your pocket, put in another bag. They're just small. Now, the original main limiter for pads, so one of the main reasons that people didn't want to use pads in the old FGC in older times is that people were considering, what if we travel to Japan for Japanese nationals, which is all on the arcade version of games, which you can't generally use pads besides Tekken. Obviously, this does not matter as much anymore as before, so the main problem that people have with pads really today is that every pad is different for each console. So here I actually have two pads. So of course I have my PS4 pad, right? And then I also have my old GameCube controller. Yes, sir, my old GameCube controller. So of course I can't use this. Let's say I use this for a long time. I can't use this to play Dragon Ball unless I get a special converter or something, so you have to buy extra equipment. Right, so when you play pad, you're basically locked to that console and PC as long as the pad has something to plug into USB. If you want to switch consoles, then you need a converter, and that's kind of rough. So next, let's talk about my personal controller of choice, an arcade stick. Some of y'all have called this a typewriter. I've joked about and called it a stone tablet. So arcade sticks are just that, right? They are controllers that are based off the arcade format. So before you needed this, again, like I mentioned before, if your goal was to play in Japanese nationals like myself, you needed to know how to play on an arcade stick. So as I mentioned before, it used to be that there were some characters that were just way harder to play on controllers, gamepads, than arcade sticks. Generally today this is not the case though. The main thing about arcade sticks versus controllers is that the buttons are all flat in front of you. So it's gonna be a little awkward, but here's the controller I'm using right now, right? I'm using a Mad Catz TES Plus. Now again, like I said earlier, they make fighting games now with the home consumer in mind now. They don't make it with arcades only in mind. So you can use controller and it's fine, like a normal pad, and it's fine. Now today, the main advantage that arcade sticks has really is that you can play on anything with the same type of controller. That is basically it. So if for some reason I had to play on an Xbox One, for instance, I could just use an Xbox One stick and it would be no problem. Also, in my opinion, the sounds that the buttons make are pretty cathartic. I like the way the buttons sound when I press them. Now, they are more expensive than pads. Budget sticks cost about the same as pads, but budget isn't the name, right? Baseline for me, you're probably expecting to pay around 110 to 150 at minimum, and premium sticks can cost around $300. But I personally look at sticks as an investment. Like, once you buy one, you can make them last like 5 years or so, as long as you take care of them and update the parts around once a year. Also, depending on the type of stick you get too, you might be able to open up really easily from the top. Some sticks like the Mad Catz TE2 or the Razer Panthera, I believe, are like that. The only real reason I would recommend anyone switch to stick today, really, is if you're just worried about like your hands. Like, stick doesn't hurt your hands as much as pads do. Pads, you got like grip done, death grip done. Stick, you're like, it's like you're playing like a piano. Like, you're just tapping, going like this. It's all good. Okay, so the last one I want to talk about is Hitbox. It's kind of the same as keyboard. I know someone will get mad for me for saying that. It's kind of the same as a keyboard. I know somebody, a controller purist maybe, will get angry at me for saying that, but it's kind of true. If you don't know what a Hitbox looks like, it looks like this. As you can see, there's a shit ton of buttons on it. There's 12 buttons on it. The thing that makes this different from pads and sticks is that all the directions are buttons that are flat in front of you as well. So theoretically, there are things you could do on a Hitbox that you can't do on anything else. That's basically the main advantage of it. A lot of people feel that technically, Hitbox is the best controller to play fighting games on. I sort of agree. Now, for example, there's this movement technique that you may or may not be familiar with. It's called the moon jump or the goichi jump or the kansai jump. People have a lot of names for this. But the concept essentially is that you are doing a one frame dash super jump by holding L and using a macro. So you can see I have the L button here and then I do it. It's 2-9 super dash macro while holding L. Now, depending on what you use, this could take a little bit of practice. So let's say on this side, on stick, right, I had a big issue for a while where I kept getting this because I kept rolling up like that. I would do down, down, forward, forward, up, forward. So 2, 3, 6, 9 instead of 2, 9 or down and up, forward. But if you play it on a Hitbox, you would not have this problem because the directions are just buttons. So once you get over the learning curve, I feel like Hitbox definitely has a big learning curve to it. Once you get over that, you will have very, very good control over your movement. Similarly, since I'm using an arcade stick, I have to kind of move left and right in order to guard, right? So if I'm blocking a left-right mix-up, I have to do this and this. I'm blocking high-low, I have to do this. But again, on a Hitbox, that's just a button. So you can get really, really tight OS guards. Your defense is technically better on a Hitbox. Really, the main thing keeping people from learning Hitbox is the learning curve. Remember, when you switch to a new peripheral, you have to basically relearn how to play the game on that peripheral. Going from a pad to a stick is a little bit weird just because of the lever, but going from a pad or stick to a Hitbox is weird because all the buttons are movement. It's kind of awkward. I've tried it before and it's really, really counterintuitive, but I have a bunch of friends who use Hitboxes successfully. So hopefully that wraps things up for you well. Again, just use what's comfortable for you. These games are made with pads in mind, so if you have a pad, then it's fine to use that. If you've been using that forever, just use that. If you want to switch to something else, just make sure you have a good reason for doing it. You don't have to do it just because your favorite player does it or whatever. Just think about, like, is this actually going to help you do stuff you can't do normally? Like if you're playing Zato or something in Guilty Gear, or if this for like long-term reasons or something. Just make sure you have a good reason if you're going to switch controllers. As usual, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. Like and subscribe if you feel like it, and I'll see you next time. Peace out.